Okay, so let's unpack this. We've got a stack of sources here.
Yeah, really compelling excerpts from Black Sun, Fevered Star, and also Mirrored Heaven.
And together, these pieces, they kind of open windows into a really complex fantasy world.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You've got ancient gods, powerful magic colliding with intense political upheaval.
And these deeply intertwined personal destinies. It's a lot.
It is. And instead of, trying to read through every single page cover to cover, think of our task today as synthesizing the essential knowledge.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive, pulling out the absolute key nuggets.
Exactly. Understanding the most important characters, the surprising nature of their powers, the major conflicts shaping their world.
And the fundamental forces like magic and prophecy that seem to be driving everything forward.
Yeah, those are huge.
So if you're looking for a way to quickly grasp the shape of this world and, the intense events unfolding within it without getting totally lost in every single detail, you're in the right place.
Consider this your shortcut, basically. Get you well informed about the core story.
Okay, let's jump in. Maybe start with a character whose journey is, well, maybe the most dramatic transformation we see, Narampa.
Narampa, yeah. Her story in these sources, it really begins in a place of tradition, aspiration even.
She's a scholar-priest candidate.
Right. Sponsored at the Celestial Tower, which is pretty much the central hub of the priesthood's power and learning in Tova, the capital city.
And her studies were broad, sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Healing, history, even something called the art of death.
Yeah.
All foundational for priestly life.
And initially, she had these dreams of using the tower's resources for scholarly stuff, right? Studying the stars.
Exactly. But her path is anything but peaceful.
Even before she becomes Sun Priest, the head of the priesthood, her life's under threat.
The sources mention this really chilling moment, an attempt on her life, a stabbing.
Thwarted only by Iktan, someone who becomes like her constant shadow, her protector.
Yes, and this immediately signals the deep political currents running right through the priesthood.
You mean tension?
Yeah, tension. Like with Abba, who's from the Golden Eagle clan. It shows how these clan rivalries stretch even into religious authority.
And Narampa also inherits a tough situation when she becomes Sun Priest.
Very tough. The previous one, Kitu, left what the sources call a mess.
A mess, like weakened influence, factions fight.
Both. The priesthood's influence was weaker, and these internal societies or factions within it were kind of at odds.
So Narampa tried to fix it. Restore their power.
She did, through traditional means at first, but she herself feels those early efforts while they ultimately failed.
And what do the sources tell us about why she felt they failed? Was it just internal resistance or something else?
The sources suggest it was a combination. The priesthood had become kind of sclerotic, internally divided, couldn't really wield the influence it once had.
And external pressures, too, from clans and politics.
Exactly. Those played a role. Her initial, more conventional approach just wasn't enough to overcome all that inertia and opposition.
And that perceived failure, plus the constant threat to her life, that pushes her down a completely radical path.
Embracing forbidden magic.
She travels to the graveyard of the gods. That sounds significant.
It is. And studies with Kupshu, a witch. This is where she learns about and starts using godflesh.
Godflesh to you. Okay, what is that exactly?
Well, the sources describe it as this potent, illicit substance. It's implied it's derived from the actual remains or maybe the essence of ancient deceased deities.
Wow. And taking it lets her control dreams.
Yeah, which becomes a powerful tool for communication, maybe even manipulation. But her connection to magic doesn't stop there.
It seems like the magic starts changing her physically, too, giving her abilities she didn't explicitly seek out.
That's right. We see descriptions of like fire burning in her hands, even brief moments of shape-shifting.
So it suggests she's becoming more than just a priest using magic. She's potentially becoming an avatar, a vessel for the sun god's power.
And what's fascinating here is the internal conflict this creates for her. The sources show her expressing regret about needing violence, even as she gains these, destructive capabilities.
Such a stark contrast to her earlier scholarly self.
Totally. And this path requires her to rely really heavily on someone like Iktan.
Her bond with Iktan seems absolutely critical.
Yeah, Iktan isn't just a bodyguard. They're someone Narampa relies on to synthesize complex information, navigate these treacherous political waters.
The sources describe Iktan having a killer's emotional aptitude. That sounds unsettling.
It is. Narampa finds it unsettling, but also recognizes it as essential for her survival.
And Iktan's loyalty, despite their disturbing nature seems absolute.
Apparently so. They're even described checking Narampa's room for threats when they are personally upset with her. That says a lot.
And underpinning all of this is her grief.
The sources detail the death of her brother, Dinauchi, at a place called the Lupine.
She was involved in preparing his body. That must have been incredible.
Yeah. And this experience left her filled with this deep, suppressed rage and grief. It clearly fuels her actions, her determination to reclaim power for the priesthood.
Maybe to prevent such losses from happening again.
Possibly. The sources note how people relied on her after his death and how that grief manifested in really complex ways.
So we see Narampa's transformation. Hopeful scholar to powerful, magically enhanced sun priest, navigating this deadly political landscape, driven by loss, protected by Ikton.
It's quite a journey.
Okay, now let's shift our focus. Across the sea to another character whose connection to ancient power is just as profound, but tied to the water.
Shiiala.
Yeah. Introduced as a teak woman and, significantly, a singer.
The teak. They're deeply connected to the sea, right? Known for their distinctive eyes.
Often striking irises, yeah. And singers possess this unique form of sea magic, the ability to influence and control the water, calm it, agitate it, through their voice, their song.
The sources also touch on something about teak culture, the scarcity of male teak. That's right. They're traditionally given to the sea upon birth, a custom that their enemies later scorn, called barbaric.
And we first meet Shiiala not at sea, but in jail.
Yeah, kind of a rough spot. In Quicola, she's a sea captain, but finds herself rescued by Lord Balaam.
Balaam, a powerful figure we'll definitely come back to. He recognizes something in her eyes.
He does. Seems to notice her unique eyes specifically. She feels this sense of guilt about her situation, and she suffers from land sickness.
Land sickness, like a physical thing.
Yeah, physical manifestation of her deep connection to the ocean. It's unnatural for her to be away from it for long.
So Balaam had plans for her, but they shift, leading her to transport Sarapio to Tova.
Exactly. And that journey is a real turning point, despite the dangers, including betrayal from her own crew, like Callow and Bite trying to kill her.
Wow, her own crew.
Yeah, but she and Sarapio develop this mutual intrigue, and she even saves his life during the passage.
Her story then takes her back home to Teak.
Right, and that's where she faces this direct confrontation with Lord Toon,
a Quicolan merchant lord and a stone sorceress, allied with Balaam.
All of the above. The sources describe Toon making these aggressive demands. She wants teak ships.
And forces the women to build them. That sounds deeply insulting, given their culture.
Extremely. Toon dismisses their traditional roles, calls their custom of giving male children to the sea barbaric. It's pure disrespect.
And this threat, this exploitation, pushes Shiiala to act.
Decisive. She destroys teak ships herself, setting canoes on fire to stop them falling into Toon's hands.
She also frees teak children from eliciting.
Yeah, the sources describe that as a place where teak kids were being held, maybe indoctrinated or controlled. She gets them out.
Okay, here's where it gets really transformative, right? The confrontation with Toon.
Oh, yeah. The sources depict Shiiala undergoing this profound change. She becomes an avatar of the Mother Water, the sea god itself.
Giving her incredible power, breathing water.
Effortlessly. A physical transformation, too, involving scale, tail, and the ability to summon huge creatures like a kraken to just devastate Toon's force.
But this power comes at a huge cost.
Significant cost. Her friend Tiani is killed by Toon in the battle.
Oh no.
And Shiiala herself temporarily loses her song, her connection to that sea magic. Plus, immense physical exhaustion from wielding that kind of power.
Despite all that pain and loss, she makes her way to Tova, joins Sarapio.
And crucially, she reviews her own status as a god avatar. She declares that because of what Quicola and Toon did to her people, this war, it's hers too now.
So we've tracked Narampa embracing divine fire and land-based magic fueled by loss and politics, and Shiiala becoming a sea goddess avatar driven by defending her people.
Both fundamentally altered by the pressures, the violence of their world.
Which naturally brings us to the third central figure, the one whose entire existence seems dictated by prophecy and divine purpose, Sarapio.
Known as the crow god reborn.
The sources describe him as blind, but he has crow vision.
Right, meaning he can see through the eyes of crows, even inhabit them, use them as spies, messengers. It gives him a unique perspective.
And his parentage is significant, son of Saga and Lord Markal.
Yes, but his very conception, his birth, wasn't just chance. It was part of a specific planned ritual.
Orchestrated by powerful figures, Balaam, Saga herself.
Pare, Edie too, all designed to bring about his existence as this reborn god.
He's got incredible abilities, shadow magic, notably.
But the sources repeatedly warn that this power comes at a steep cost. It consumes what it touches, suggests a drain on him, or maybe something else.
And he was tutored in Obreji ways by Pawaje.
Yeah, Pawaje, Balaam's cousin, who seems to have had this complex attachment to Sarapio, having loved his mother, Saya.
What exactly are these Obreji ways the sources mention?
The sources describe Obreji ways as sort of a tradition, maybe a philosophy, focused on seeing the world through the eyes of the Carrion Crow clan's god.
So rituals, life and death cycles, accepting hard...
Pretty much. Embracing the perspective of the crow, the scavenger. It's not always pleasant, but it reveals hidden realities.
And central to Sarapio's journey is the prophecy.
The prophecy associated with the crow god reborn. Yeah. The sources cite parts of it, like 3 wars to lose, 3 wars to win.
But they highlight specific tasks for him. Turn rotten fruit to flower, slay the god bride still unloved, and press the sun to fell the sire.
His entire path seems dictated by navigating these cryptic demands.
Which creates a huge internal conflict for him.
Definitely. The sources frequently call it a war within, this constant tension between his human self, his emotions, and the demanding, often ruthless nature of the crow god essence inside him.
And his journey to Tova for the convergence, that big gathering and festival, is the catalyst.
That's when the internal war really becomes external, yeah. He initially clashes with the established powers there, but he starts to emerge as a leader, draws followers like Ma'aka.
Ma'aka, the leader of the Odoha, a distinct group in Tova.
Yeah, respected leader of the Odoha. They seem to be skilled warriors, play a big role in Sarapio's forces later.
His relationship with Okoa, though, that's particularly nuanced, difficult.
Very. They're cousins, raised somewhat together. Their dynamic is complex. They fight initially. Okoa resists Sarapio's destiny, his methods.
In Okoa's betrayal, that's significant. He takes the Sun Priest's mask.
Yeah, which isn't just ceremonial. It's a powerful artifact, a weapon associated with the priesthood's authority, maybe even channels divine power.
Sarapio must have been heartbroken.
Clearly, views Okoa as the brother he never had. Yet, despite this massive betrayal, he ultimately forgives Okoa, makes him his general.
Wow. Puts immense trust in him.
Even as Okoa is grappling with his own confusion about duty, is it to his family's legacy, his clan, or Sarapio?
Let's unpack that god bride prophecy bit. Sarapio initially suspects Shiiala.
He does, but the sources make it clear he refuses to harm her. He even says he'd rather die in himself than fulfill that part if it meant killing Shiiala.
So he tries to manipulate the prophecy's fulfillment.
Yeah, which leads to his marriage to Isel, who has just become the new queen of Tova after her predecessor died.
But this attempt to control destiny, it backfires tragically.
Immediately. Isel dies almost right after the marriage. The sources are a bit ambiguous on the exact detail. Happens in chaos. Maybe killed by Okoa trying to use a sun dagger. Maybe even by Sarapio in the struggle.
But what's clear is the aftermath.
Sarapio protects Okoa, sends him away, publicly claims responsibility for Isel's death himself.
Which raises a huge question. How much is unavoidable fate, and how much is shaped or even twisted by Sarapio's own choice, his attempts to subvert it?
Exactly. That's a core tension.
And one of the final core tasks the prophecy demands. Press the sun to fell the sire, meaning Sarapio has to confront and kill his father, Balaam.
This act is described as necessary to cut the path, presumably clearing the way for his destiny to fully manifest.
And this confrontation is looming, right? Especially now Balaam's gone to the tower, the priesthood stronghold.
Yeah, the stage seems set for that. And what's fascinating here is how these intense personal journeys, these divine mandates, are so deeply tangled up with the broader political end.
The sources outline this complex society. You've got the priesthood, the Sky-Maid clans.
Like Carrion Crow, Golden Eagle, Water Strider, Winged Serpent, each with their own territories, traditions.
And other distinct groups like the Odoha.
Right, who we mentioned aligned with Sarapio, skilled warriors.
And there's this deep history of conflict running through everything.
Oh yeah, the Night of Knives massacre, perpetrated by parts of the priesthood against the Sky-Maid clan, created lasting bad blood, especially with the Carrion Crow.
We also learn about Iowa's rebellion. That's Okoa's father against the ruling Sky-Maid hierarchy.
Which led to his execution by the Watchers, a powerful, feared enforcement branch of the priesthood, distinct from the oracles who interpret signs, and the Knives, another militant arm.
And these old grievances directly fuel the current conflicts.
Absolutely. The Golden Eagle clan is particularly defiant. They even form an alliance with external forces like Wikola, helped by figures like Layat.
Leading to direct clashes, like a battle with Iktan.
Yeah, a brutal battle where Numa, the Golden Eagle matron, their leader, gets killed.
And ultimately, the Golden Eagle clan falls, dispersed under Sarapio.
That's what the sources describe. as Sarapio consolidates power, seeks control of Tova. And as we discuss these factional conflicts, it's important for you, the listener, to remember we're just relaying events and perspectives from the source, not endorsing any specific side in this complex struggle.
Right. Maintaining impartiality is key. Beyond the main figures, the sources bring in other characters playing crucial,
Like Fei Yu, the healer, vital for tending to the wounded, including Sarapio.
and Zataya and Sadesa helping Narampa, giving support, counsel.
And Anuka, the engineer. Her skills become critical in planning the city's defense later on.
It highlights that even in a world shaped by gods and prophecy, practical skills and support networks are still essential.
Totally. And we also see other merchant lords, not just Toon, are part of Balaam's bigger schemes. It underlines this growing external threat of war from places like Quikola and Hokaya.
Okay, so let's try and bring these threads together. We have Narampa, transformed, wielding powerful, volatile magic in Tova's priesthood.
We have Shiiala, reborn as a sea avatar, joining the fight with this fierce personal stake after Teak.
And Sarapio, the crow god reborn, wrestling with a prophecy dictating his every move, trying to find agency amidst fate.
And all these elements are converging, setting the stage for a massive conflict.
The sources describe Tova actively preparing for war. Inuka, the engineer,
She's central to these preparations, developing defensive strategies, like planning to deliberately flood parts of the city to slow down invaders.
Wow. And devising ways to sink ships before they even reach Tova's shores.
Yeah, making the city a really formidable target.
And over all of this hangs the prophecy. Sarapio's journey seems inevitably leading him towards confronting Balaam, his father, the sire.
Likely at the tower, which Balaam has retreated to. This confrontation is presented as the final necessary act for Sarapio to cut the path.
And fully embody his destiny as the crow god.
Right.
But this path is just paved with immense personal cost. The sources don't shy away from that burden on Sarapio.
No, he grapples with unforgivable things he's done. Killing Shaya, his potential role in Isil's tragic death. It weighs on him.
Shiiala has suffered deep loss, made huge sacrifices on Teak.
And Okoa, caught between loyalties, his own actions. He's clearly tormented by internal conflict, that earlier betrayal of Sarapio.
Yet, amidst all this darkness, the crushing weight of prophecy and war, the sources also highlight moments of connection.
Yeah, the growing bond between Sarapio and Shiiala is really notable.
They have conversations exploring deep themes like love not being earned, but freely given.
Which is pretty poignant in a world seemingly defined by transactions of power and destiny.
And despite the dangers, the violence, the prophecy that once marked Shiiala as a potential victim, she chooses to stay with Sarapio,
stating she would burn the world down for him. It's powerful.
It's a choice that really underscores the idea that even figures seemingly bound by divine will can make human choices about who they stand with, what they fight for.
And Shiala's declaration that this war is hers too, it transforms it from just Sarapio's ordained path into something deeply personal for her, born from the injustices against her and her.
So what does this deep dive into these sources really tell us?
Well, we've seen characters thrust into or transformed by these extraordinary circumstances, grappling with predetermined destinies, making incredibly difficult choices under unimaginable pressure.
And navigating profoundly personal relationships amidst these huge political and magical conflicts.
It encourages you, the listener, to reflect on how individuals adapt when their identities are challenged, how personal loss can become this powerful catalyst for action.
And how even those seemingly destined for greatness must confront their own humanity, the ethical compromises their path demands.
And here's a thought to leave you with. Drawn directly from that prophecy that defines Sarapio, It says the Carrion King achieves victory, but in winning, he loses everything.
Okay.
So given how deeply Sarapio has now embraced both his terrifying power and his profound connection with Shiiala, what could that ultimate loss truly mean for him?
What is the ultimate cost of fulfilling one's destiny? And what does that victory even look like if everything else is gone?
Something to think about.